All right, let's dive into something pretty fascinating. Today, we're going to connect a really ancient story to the technology that's, well, running our lives right now. We're going to explore what a Quranic idea called Pharaonic logic can teach us about the algorithms that curate our entire digital world.
I know. It sounds like a bit of a stretch, right? What on earth could a powerful ruler from thousands of years ago have in common with the code that's deciding the next video you see on your phone? Well, as we're about to find out, the connection is surprisingly deep and way more relevant than you might think.
So first things first, when we talk about Pharaoh logic, we're not just talking about one guy in history. Think of it more like a mindset, a pattern. It's a specific way of thinking that pops up in any system, whether it's ancient or brand new, that gets nervous when people start asking tough questions and wants to keep a tight grip on control.
Okay, so in this first part, let's break down how this logic actually works. The number one goal is to control reality itself, and that whole project starts with controlling what people are allowed to say, and, just as importantly, what they're allowed to hear. This right here is the key quote from our source material. And just notice what Pharaoh is doing. He doesn't argue against Moses' message. He doesn't debate the facts. Now, he immediately reframes the conversation. He paints Moses' speech as a direct threat, as something that will cause social danger and chaos.
And boom, here's the modern parallel, side by side. On the left, you've got Pharaoh's logic. He frames speech he doesn't like as disorder, and silencing it as protection. And on the right, the very same logic in algorithmic language. Content isn't just wrong, it's deranked or labeled harmful. Taking it down isn't censorship, it's all about community safety. You see? The underlying justification is exactly the same.
This really gets to the heart of the whole strategy. The core assumption here is that truth isn't something we discover together through open discussion. Nope. It's something that has to be managed. If a system can control what you see and what you don't see, it has immense power to shape what you believe is real.
And this is a really critical switch. The main focus is no longer on trying to figure out if something is true or not. The big, important question becomes one of risk management. Is this idea dangerous to the way things are right now?
And when you make that switch, a few things happen. Suddenly, truth isn't the most important thing anymore. Stability is. And maybe most critically, the system in power gets to be the one who decides what harmful even means. It sets all the rules of the game.
So that naturally leads us to our second section, because once a system starts controlling speech to manage risk, it's not a huge leap to trying to create a total monopoly over what even counts as truth.
You know, for this kind of logic to really work, you just can't have any competition. Pharaoh's power depends on him being the one and only source of guidance for his people. Any other voice, like the message Moses brings, isn't just a disagreement, it's a fundamental threat to his entire authority.
And the parallel just keeps on going. Just like Pharaoh says, "I'm the only one who can guide you," our modern algorithms are creating their own kind of monopoly on guidance. They're the ones deciding which sources are authoritative, boosting trusted institutions, and quietly suppressing voices they decide are unverified. So what you discover isn't a free-for-all, it's heavily curated.
The Quran actually has a specific word for this concept, taghut, and it refers to any kind of authority, a person, an organization, even a whole system that steps over its proper line and tries to control things it has no business controlling, like what people are allowed to believe.
Okay, let's go back to Pharaoh's words for just a second. I want you to focus on one tiny word, may. I fear he may cause corruption. See, he's not even reacting to something Moses has already done. He's acting out of fear of what Moses might do down the road.
This is the logic of striking first, and it's a perfect blueprint for so much of modern content moderation. We have predictive algorithms trying to stop harm before it even happens. We have content being suppressed just in case it breaks a rule. The source calls this probabilistic guilt, where the risk of doing something wrong in the future is treated like you've already done it.
So the final principle here is this really dangerous confusion. When you have a system that's built for stability and smooth engagement, order starts to look a lot like truth. A calm, predictable online space becomes the goal, even if that means you have to suppress inconvenient or disruptive truths to keep it that way.
But here's the twist. The story doesn't just end with Pharaoh's logic winning the day. The source material points out this incredibly powerful counterargument that comes from the most surprising place: a believer inside Pharaoh's own inner circle. Just listen to this one sentence. It completely cuts through all the fear and panic. It's such a radical statement of confidence. The believer is basically saying, hey, let him talk. If he's a liar, his lies will fall apart on their own, and that's on him, not us.
Think about what that really implies. It implies a deep, profound trust in the power of truth itself. It's the idea that truth is strong enough to stand on its own 2 feet. It doesn't need a powerful authority to protect it. And it suggests that falsehood is actually pretty weak, and it'll eventually collapse, which means we don't need to panic and start silencing everything.
So, building on that principle, the source suggests a totally different way to do things. Instead of these opaque, preemptive systems, this model calls for things like transparency, real human accountability, and making decisions based on actual evidence, not just future risks. The goal is to suppress as little as possible, all while operating within clear, understandable moral lines.
Okay, so let's bring this all home in our final section. We've looked at the logic, we've seen the modern parallels, and we've explored the alternative. So what does this all mean for the very real systems we interact with every single day?
Just think about the journey we've been on. It all starts with something that seems pretty innocent, a system deciding what shows up on your screen.
And then we see how that control gets justified. It's not called censorship, of course. It's framed as a necessary tool for protection, for keeping the community safe.
And the argument from the source is that once a system starts doing these things, controlling what you see, silencing voices preemptively, and defining truth in terms of its own stability, it's not a neutral tool anymore. It has become a structure that operates on that ancient authoritarian Pharaonic logic.
And we'll leave you with this final, powerful thought. The ultimate form of control isn't always about brute force. It's about controlling the very boundaries of a person's reality, managing the information and ideas they use to build their entire world. Which leaves us with a pretty important question. Who or what is building yours?